Hello, welcome ladies to our next segment for Property for Chicks. Today we have the lovely Elise from CADCon, who is a town planner with us, who we're going to ask some very difficult questions to and see what they can answer, and hope we don't get a bill at the end of it. So welcome Elise.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Promise I won't send you a bill.
Very good. And then my lovely co-host Rachel is also with us today. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, Elise. Welcome, ladies. It's going to be a great day. I know that Elise is going to offer some amazing insight for us, and such an important part of development, having a town planner. So really looking forward to the time with Elise today. Thanks again for sharing with us.
Very good.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we were meant to be last week, so if you think the 2 weeks has been a long time, it's been 3 weeks since our last broadcast, but you can see all our stuff on our Facebook page, and we'll be back next week with a training session. So let's get into it and not dilly-dally any longer. Elise, how did you get into town planning?
Funny one. I always wanted to be an architect. Turns out didn't like that at uni. So I switched to town planning and fell in love with it, honestly. It gives me the best of both worlds. I really enjoy researching and reviewing, I suppose, policies and literature. But at the same time, I have a bit of a creative flair. So town planning gives me a chance to problem solve and that literature review and research into it. So pretty lucky to fall into something that I really enjoy at a young age and haven't had to try a lot of things yet. So,
Very good.
Yeah, really.
Very good. I always wanted to be an architect, but apparently you had to be very good at maths, and I was not planning on being very good at maths. So. Very good. All right, and then the other $1 million question, what does a town planner do?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a tricky one, or maybe not such a tricky one, but an interesting one, and I could probably spend the whole broadcast just speaking into what a town planner does. You could probably ask, every town planner, and they'll give you a bit of a different answer as to what we do. But I suppose, generally speaking, we deal with shaping communities primarily through development. And I suppose how we do that comes down to what kind of town planner you are. So you could be a strategic planner, which normally works for a local council or a state government agency, and you deal with writing literature and planning scheme policies and I suppose the legislative intent as to how development is to occur and where it does occur. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you can be in development assessment, which is what I deal in. And that's more to do with site-specific developments. And if, a person wants to develop their block of land, we look into whether that's something that they can do and if it abides by, that local council's planning scheme controls, and we prepare and lodge applications on their behalf to get the appropriate planning approval. And, most people tend to be in development assessment like I am. And, not many people tend to do the strategic planning and writing policies. I guess, more people are into developing sites as opposed to, large scale areas. So I'm quite lucky that I do development assessment. I really enjoy it. It gives me the chance to work all throughout Queensland, and I deal with preparing applications for residential developments like houses and duplex and units. I've done industrial developments and even commercial and office spaces as well. And so I guess basically my role as a town planner, I look at the feasibility of a landowner or a developer and how they can develop the site, what they can do on it, any potential constraints, costing that might impact them, and sort of give them an idea as to the feasibility of it, and then help them to get the appropriate planning approvals to move ahead and then construct or build that development. So I guess it's a very simplified way to say what is a town planner and what we do.
Very good. So who needs one? What sort of people would need to have a town planner?
So I would say if you're looking at doing any type of development, probably best speak with a town planner just to ensure that, if you do need town planning approval or not. More often than not, you do need some kind of approval from council, and we're definitely able to guide you, where you have to go or who you need to speak to get those relevant approvals. So, if you're doing a house extension, you want to put in a granny flat, you do want to subdivide your block of land, there's definitely, like council overlays and constraints that can affect whether you need planning approval or certain sign-offs from, like building certifieds or perhaps even, sign-offs from engineers as well. And so we look at, your development site and any potential constraints to it and the appropriate approvals required to, move forward and get that development undertaken. So sometimes we're required, sometimes we're not, but we definitely let you know that's part of our role and our feasibilities, I suppose.
But you certainly wouldn't buy a big block of land and want to develop it and attempt to do it yourself with council.
Probably not unless you've done it before.
Sure. Yes.
But town planners are, quite helpful because we can definitely, make the process a lot easier. And that is what we do. We are constantly doing development applications for people, so we definitely know what council, willing to accept for a block of land, what their expectations are, and take a bit of the hassle out of the process for you as well. More often than not, people aren't fully aware of costs involved or the full, process required to undertake a development or to subdivide their land, and we help break that down and make it easy for you to understand, and we can help project manage that for you as well too. So yeah, it can be very intensive.
Well, that's of course the $1 million question is what sort of costs are involved and what other people are involved in various like even a small 8-10 lot subdivision. What sort of other people would you expect to have on your costings other than a town planner?
Yeah, so I guess it sort of comes down to each site is a bit different, and so it's hard to give an accurate answer because it will change for every site. But as a general understanding, if you speak with the town planner, or even if you go speak to the council first and say this is what you're looking to do, we can let you know roughly what your costs are going to be and who's going to be involved. So, for example, for a subdivision, a simple 1 to 2 lot subdivision, you'll definitely have, your town planning fees to do applications and get planning approvals from council. Then you also need to have engineers involved because they have to do up plans to show where your new services on lots are going to go. Sometimes there's environmental constraints or bushfire constraints on a property, and so you need to get an environmental scientist involved. If you're on a steep block of land, sometimes you need a geotechnical engineer to get involved so they can provide certification that the site is safe to develop on. Sometimes applications have to be referred to state government as well, depending on if it's on, like in a state controlled road or if you're within close proximity to a train station or railway. So there are all sort of little things that can impact your cost and, make it go from being small scale to a bit more of a larger cost involved in that project. But generally speaking, if you're doing a straightforward 1 to 2 lot subdivision, if they even exist anymore, you're probably looking at about $80,000 to $100,000 all up. And so that's for all your consultant fees, your connections to all services like your water and sewer, electrical and telecommunication, and legal fees to actually title those new individual lots. There's also infrastructure charges, which is roughly $30,000 for each lot, which is a price that a lot of people aren't aware of. And that always throws a bit of a spanner into some people's viability in terms of pricing. So, as I said, it's definitely worth talking to a town planner so they can, let you know what your costs are and all your different types of applications and application fees, so you can figure out exactly if your project is going to be viable from an economic perspective, from the start. And obviously, I suppose, the bigger your development is or the more lots you're going to be doing, that price is going to change as well. But as a starting point, if you're just looking at doing a simple 1 into 2 lot, expect around $80,000 to $100,000. But definitely check with the town plan and make sure there's no, spiders or icky constraints on the side as well.
Koalas, water,
koalas.
trees that have to have names on them, and
I think this is such an important thing, Elise, because I see it so many times where people see an opportunity that they can maybe develop, or they've got their own land that they can, and they don't run their numbers and they don't get advice based on what it's going to cost them. And then they go to do the development and either want to sell it afterwards to someone else to do the work, or they do it themselves and actually work out that there's actually no money in it. So it's so important to get advice from the experts, being the town planners, and if it's a design, your architect, and all the costing for the reports and different things. So that's just a point I wanted to make, that the feasibility should be absolutely number one priority as you work alongside with your town planner, and then that can just be adjusted as you go along to make sure you're on track.
Yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend not rushing into a project, especially if it's the first time for yourself. I would, if you've got an idea that you want to, do a subdivision, you want to do a duplex, you want to get into development, figure out what it is you actually want to do and have the conversation with, ourselves, the town planner, and we can tell you who else needs to be involved. And then, go speak to those specific co-consultants and figure out roughly what they're going to cost, and see if it's something that you can actually undertake in the first place and understand, I suppose, a bit more about the process and what's involved and potential hidden costs or where your costs might come from. As you said, a lot of the time, people aren't fully aware of the whole process and all your applications, which is completely understandable, because you wouldn't know unless you're actually involved within, I suppose, this industry, or someone that's been through this process, because it can be quite tricky. Yeah, definitely. And I suppose as well, there's as I said, each site is quite different and has their own constraints. So what it might cost for one block could be completely different for another block down the street or in another suburb. Because there's all sorts of different constraints that you can have, like as I sort of briefly mentioned before. You can have environmental constraints with trees, bushfires, you can have, waterways or wetlands, you can have sloping areas on your site as well. We see quite frequently issues with trying to discharge stormwater, because like your stormwater to be discharged to the street, which is the local point of discharge. And if you can't get that, or if you buy a block thinking, there's nothing on it, but then you have issues with potentially stormwater, that can just add $20,000 to your project just like that. Or it might be something that, council won't approve in the first place, which is why, I sort of recommend definitely speak with, ourselves and the other consultants that we, advise that will be required, and they will be able to advise you on potential issues and costings to get around those issues, or just in general what the project will cost you as well. Because it's better to be safe than sorry, and definitely add a bit more of a contingency on your costing just in case as well. It's very rare that projects end up costing exactly as they are stated at the beginning too.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Thanks, Elise.
My favourite is always when sellers want to sell a property and they're like, oh, but you're going to make so much money on this. They just have no idea. The process could be 6 to 12 months. How many people? As you said, we're doing one where all the trees have got a name, and which ones we're allowed to cut down, which ones we're not, and none of them are actually. But, there's a koala, there's a this. And yeah, it's like, oh, but you're going to buy my block of your land and you're going to make 3 blocks and you're going to make all this money. Like,
Yeah.
no idea how many costs and hidden costs and just goes on and on and on. Who would want to do development sometimes?
And just something else to add on that we come across quite frequently as well, is that, you know, a real estate agent or a seller has told them specifically that, yes, you can do this type of development, or no, you don't need approvals to do this. And, you know, it's not always the case that they're giving bad advice, but, you know, a few times we have come across that what they're saying is incorrect, and the poor buyer ends up, you know, putting a contract through and buying a block of land, and nothing can be done with it, or not what they intended, because it doesn't pan out or is not viable as originally they were told. So if you are looking to purchase a block of land and interested in development, I would highly recommend getting a due diligence clause. And part of your due diligence, have a chat with the council, have a chat with your town planner, and make sure that what you're being told is correct, and there's nothing else on that block that's going to be a major concern.
Awesome. Absolutely.
You can do this and this, all subject to council availability, STCA. Like, yes. Subject to, yes. Very good. All right, well, let's move on to councils, our favourite topic. Do you find in general, because you must work with heaps of different councils, some are more pro-development, or are they just all difficult, or does it just seem like they're all difficult?
I guess it all sort of depends on which area you're in and your development that you're trying to undertake. So, you know, councils have planning schemes which outline what type of development can occur and where it can occur. And if you're doing development in accordance with those requirements and what they want to see in that area, you know, they're pretty receptive to, you know, your development application. But if you're trying to put up, you know, a high-rise building in a suburban area that's intended for low-rise development, then they're not going to be too happy, and you don't really have a good chance of getting your approval through. But, you know, it's kind of a tricky one as well, because town planning and development can be heavily influenced by politics as well. So certain areas will have, you know, politics or councillors that don't want to see high-rise development or don't want to see this or that happen in a particular area, which can make, you know, some developments harder to get through council, or, you know, it takes a bit more negotiation or design changes to get through. But at the end of the day, I suppose, you know, we're a growing population, and more infrastructure and more buildings and more development does have to occur at some point to cater for everyone and their needs. So I guess ultimately you've just got to think about what development you're planning to do and how that fits in with that particular area or, you know, community that you're looking to build in. And as all, your town planner can give you a good indication if you're on the right track or not.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I roughly said 6 to 12 months, but that's, you know, from my very unknowledgeable town planning knowledge. How long does it take to get a development application through, which is, now, is it code accessible, or one that you're doing it with the correct correct zoning? You're not changing zoning. We'll do that next. How long roughly do they take?
Yeah, so if you're doing a code accessible application, which is what, you know, is considered to be consistent with the intent of that land zone, and considered to be in accordance with the intent of what council wants to see for that area, you know, it's probably somewhere around 3 months to 6 months, and that depends on if you're doing a development that fully complies with all the design controls for that particular block of land as well. You know, if there's one or two few issues or relaxations you're trying to seek, depending on the nature of them, it could take a bit longer. You know, because we have that applications that are approved in less than 3 months, but on average they are that 3 to 6 month period, and then that's like your houses and units and, a few lots of subdivisions. But then when you start getting into big, 20 lot, 30 lot, 50 lot subdivisions, which we have done as well, sometimes they take a year just with council alone, and sometimes even longer as well, just to, address everyone's concerns and make sure that every party that's involved in that application is being heard and is addressed appropriately, and come to a, resolution that suits everyone's needs as well. So, again, it's something you can always ask your town planner, roughly what your time frame is. More often than not, if you're a first-time developer or small-scale development, expect 3 to 6 months with council.
Okay. What about impact assessment ones, the ones where you want to change the zoning or do something you shouldn't be doing? Or how much longer does that add?
Yeah, I'd probably say at least another, because you've got to publicly notify impact assessable applications. That public notification period takes 1 month, generally speaking. And then depending on potential comments that you get back from the community, whether they be favourable or not, you might want to address those concerns or their responses and do some design changes and just respond to them and make sure that their needs are being heard as well. So that can, depending on the nature of the responses you get back, it could be an additional month, it could be an additional 3 months. That sort of really just depends on the development, I suppose. So hard to give an accurate answer.
Yes, very good.
How long is the piece through? It's one of those sorts of things.
yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Depending on inquiries, no inquiries,
yes,
all those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a good idea.
One of those responses back from the community is quite strongly worded and they have a good point. They might come back to you and ask you to readdress something or consider changing it to suit, community needs as well too.
Yeah.
Now, with the ones that are code accessible, which means you've bought a block of land, it has low density zoning, which means you can put house blocks on it. So you're not doing anything against the town plan. You're keeping the trees, keeping the koalas, all of that. Can your neighbours still complain? Like, have they got anything that they can do, or is it just tough bickies? The block of land is that zoning, and you just got to put up with it.
Yeah. So if you're doing, as you said, code accessible, completely compliant, you can, put in your complaint and make a response to council. But it's up to council at the end of the day to assess and decide on that application. And if you're doing what's compliant with what's allowable in that zone, it kind of is a case of, sorry, it's tough bickies. It's not what everyone likes to hear, but I suppose at the end of the day, everyone has development rights to some degree. If you do find out that, your neighbour's not completely happy with something, I would recommend having that conversation with them and just communicating. It could be something that's easily resolved and doesn't need to turn into a nasty situation as well. Sometimes it's just the case that people don't fully understand what's occurring and what they think's happening isn't actually the case. So yeah, if you find out your neighbour's not happy with something, try and have a chat with them, whether they, end of the planning legislation, whether they've actually got the opportunity to make, submission on that application, not with trade sectors, but impact assessment, you definitely do have to say, and that's got a lot more weight.
Sounds like it's pouring rain at your place there. Elise, you're starting to get quieter and quieter. I can hear somebody's got rain. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's pouring rain here.
Mine's on the cusp, but not raining. Not yet.
Oh, maybe it's outside. Oh, no, it's my place. I've just taken the headphones off. It's pouring rain here on the hinterland. So as long as you can hear me. Very good. Just. Now, so if council come back and go, tough biggies, that's, you're just going to have to put up with what's going on. Can you do anything else? Can you take them to court and all these things? Or is it just like, that's just how the town plan is, they're not doing anything wrong and deal with it? Or can you continue to take it on if you've got money?
Yeah, so many councils decide
All right, might just need to get you to talk up a bit louder, Elise. I can't. Can you hear her, Rachel?
But Karen,
Just.
maybe you should mute yourself while she's speaking them. Yeah. Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, great.
All right. Sorry, I kind of lost where I was at. Yeah, so if council decides an application, whether it be an approval or a refusal, you can always appeal that decision and try and have it changed. I guess the biggest issue is whether you would be successful in appealing that decision or not. And I guess it kind of comes down to what the application is and the reasoning behind why council decided to issue either that approval or refusal. So if you're doing, a code accessible application and it is in line with council's intent for that particular area, and they issue a approval and you're not happy that that development has gone ahead, the chances of success in appealing that, is a bit hard because, development has been done in accordance with what's allowable. If there's certain aspects of that development where they sought relaxations that, weren't exactly fully compliant with what council has intended, but they've still approved it, then there might be some prospects. But ultimately, if you do want to appeal a decision, I would recommend seeking legal advice from someone that's got experience in planning law, as well as getting some opinions from town planners as well as to what they think on that decision from council, and if they think, what has been done is in accordance with the planning scheme, and if there's any potential issues with that decision as well. It's sort of a tough one at a case-by-case basis. I suppose more often than not, applications that get appealed tend to be ones that are impact accessible. So they're the ones that require public notification, and they're not necessarily considered to be consistent with the intent of the area, but somewhat consistent, I suppose, or somewhat council has considered it to be within the community's needs and desired.
And I'd be looking at the cost of possibly engaging a solicitor or a lawyer to fight for you to get the changes reversed based on what they've actually allowed you to do. So I'd be also weighing up those types of costs. If we did the development and we lost 2 blocks, but we engaged a solicitor, like, where's that going to leave us? And how long are you in the market and different things. So there's all those sorts of things to take into consideration. Obviously for the larger type blocks. Yeah, but
you're probably not really going to, appeal someone's development decision, if they just got, a minor relaxation, perhaps to a boundary setback. If it was only a relaxation of, 0.5 a metre, different story if they're seeking a major relaxation on setback requirements. It sort of just depends on exactly what that development is, and it tends to be more of the larger scale ones because, as you sort of mentioned, the cost of trying to have it appealed is sometimes not really viable and not worth what the end result is going to achieve anyway.
Yes, exactly. So just as Karin comes back on screen, what would be, just for our viewers, what would be one tip that you might, give, or one thing you would say to a client, if they were going to be looking at doing a development site, maybe something small, what would be one of the bits of advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, so my bit of advice, which I sort of touched on briefly before, is if you're looking at a property and you want to put, go to contract or put in an offer for a property, always have a due diligence clause on that and talk to a town planner or council and figure out what your costs are and any issues with that site, just to make sure that what you're planning to do is going to be feasible and viable, and there's not something that you haven't considered as part of that development that's going to, turn it upside down essentially. So due diligence clause on your contract. A lot of people don't do it, and I find it's a big mistake.
Yeah, and I think I mean, we're so lucky here in Queensland that we can have due diligence. It's something that, the majority of people understand, are aware of and know about. So it's a really great tool to be able to work out whether the sites work, especially if you're in a competition for a site and you have to make a decision quickly, then the due diligence is imperative. So yeah, that's really fantastic. And thanks so much, Elise.
That's right. And just slightly further on that, because I know some sellers aren't always favourable to people putting due diligence clauses in. So you can, sort of use your finance clause as a chance to check what your costs are. And then if it doesn't stack up, you can say financially it doesn't stack up. But just make sure there is that sort of clause that's in there to make sure you've got a chance to speak to someone and get that further knowledge, just to double check.
Yeah, well, anyone trying to sell a development site without allowing them due diligence time, well, that's going to be challenging.
They try.
They try, yeah.
They try. Yes, all
absolutely.
Right. All right, well, I think we've just about come to the end. Thank you so much, Elise. That was very informative and hopefully a bit of an eye-opener for people who have maybe just venturing into the world of development, just how much is really out there and how much you can't do yourself, and you really need to talk to a town planner. So thank you very much, Elise. Thank you to my lovely co-host, Rachel. And Rachel and I will be back next week, and we're going to do, further on from this, feasibilities. Even though I don't like maths, I do like feasibilities, and Excel adds it all up for me, so it's all good. So we'll be coming back to cost out some of these things and give you an idea on some of these costings, and further on from what Elise has gone through with us today. So thank you again, Elise. Thank you again, Rachel. You can follow us on Property for Chicks on Facebook, and our recordings will be there after the show. Thank you all very much, and good night. Goodbye.